Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue the popular theme here associated with Skinwalker encounters. For this video, I'm going to talk about two entries, two short stories, both of them coming from the reddit.com website, from the subreddit called Skinwalkers. One of them, even though it's the shortest one of all, is actually very fascinating to me because it has to feature more of a scary town instead of, let's say, an encounter with a skinwalker. But reading this short info, it definitely left an impression on me. And the other one just has to do with another scary encounter with a potential skinwalker itself. So the first one is titled Small Town. We'll talk about that one first. And then the next one is titled There's Something There. So let's go ahead and let's talk about both of these entries here, and then I'll give my own opinions on each afterward. So the first one is called Small Town, and it comes from a user by the name of OK Information 554. Really short entry, but still great stuff. And then here's what they stated. My parents are not superstitious. They don't believe in ghosts. They don't believe in anything supernatural, really. Once me and my family were driving to Colorado, and we stopped in a small town in southern Utah near some reservations. This town was in the absolute middle of nowhere. As far as we could tell, it was an inhabited town with gas stations and small stores that were open, but the weird thing was there was absolutely no people anywhere, inside or outside of any of the buildings that we could see. There were also no cars anywhere either. Just as what it seemed like in the middle of a Twilight Zone episode. There was a strange feeling too. My parents didn't mention it until later, but we could all feel it. A sort of unpleasant, you aren't supposed to be here kind of feeling, coupled with a sense of dread. The other thing that was really strange was there were deer everywhere, probably 20 or 30 just randomly walking up and down the streets. We pulled into town for gas, but we never stopped. We didn't know if we had enough gas to get to the next town, but my parents were too uncomfortable to stop. And so we just turned around and left town and never looked back. Then that's it. That's, again, very, very short, but that has to do with the entry called Small Town. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. The reason why I wanted to feature it is because I too had a kind of similar experience a couple of years back. I would say maybe about 10 years ago now. And this was when, as a family, we were driving all the way from Texas to Nevada. And on the way there, you definitely have to make gas station stops. On one of them, it was in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere, in a gas station in the dead of night. I mean, we're talking something like almost out of a horror movie when it comes to this situation. But there was no choice, absolutely no choice at all, because the gauge was running on empty. And so I just remember stopping there and then just looking around, and it was so eerie because it was pitch black everywhere outside of, let's say, the gas station itself, which looks like it was built like in the 1950s, and then one of those single lights on top of the actual ceiling, the ceiling, if you call it that, the one that goes above the gas pump. That was about it. The inside of the gas station was probably open. There was probably somebody there just manning it 24 hours a day. We didn't really go inside for it. We just basically paid outside right there on the gas pump. But boy, what an eerie feeling. Definitely something that I remember to this day because nothing was surrounding the area, just completely pitch black, and then maybe some lights here and there from the highway, but that was about it. That was literally the only point of stop for the longest time in between going from point A to point B in the middle of nowhere. Just creepy stuff. So when I was reading this story, I could absolutely get that sense of what these people were having. It's that situation where you're just in this unfamiliar area and you definitely don't feel comfortable right then and there. I literally thought that something could happen there at that moment and nobody would find us for who knows how long. Just eerie stuff altogether. Luckily, though, everything, of course, came out okay. We got the gas, and then we were gone at that point. Now, the next story is from a user called The Other Guy 952. They titled it, There's Something There, and here's what they have to state. I'll never forget the night of August 14th, 2021. I was fishing the river with my friend in a suburb of Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. We loved coming to this public park to fish because it was quiet and there was a nice sandbar to fish from. This park had a burial ground about a half mile from our spot. And so after fishing for a better part of the day, we decided to leave at dusk. In order to get back to our vehicles, we had to take a trail through the woods, which was about maybe a 5-minute walk. And so I had put a clip on the light on the bill of my hat so that we could see the trail. I remember when I first glanced ahead down the trail, I saw two circular white lights that I assumed were fireflies. Once we got further down the trail, we were closer to the area where I had seen these fireflies. It was then that I saw a pair of eyes that were either highly reflective from my light or they were glowing white. It wasn't long before I could also make out a body. It was a very large white body on 4 legs, bigger than a wolf, but unnaturally skinny. I couldn't make out any facial features because its eyes were so bright. I wanted to warn my friend, but all I could manage to say was, "There's something there." We had no choice but to proceed because this was the only way back to our vehicles. This thing just stared us down, but didn't make any sound. My friend yelled at it to try and scare it away, but it didn't react at all. I yelled at it after she did, and it responded back by mimicking my voice. I honestly questioned myself and thought I was just imagining things. And so I yelled at it again, and it responded back at the same volume, same pitch, exactly like my voice. At this point, we realized this was not an animal. And so we both continued on the path in silence, but I maintained eye contact with this creature. I felt like this thing was ready to attack us at any moment, but it just stood there staring. Eventually, we were out of the woods and I could no longer see its eyes. We made it back to our vehicles and felt a sense of relief. I asked my friend, "Did you hear that talk back to me?" She said she did, and it sounded like my voice when it responded back to us. If she hadn't heard the voice, I would have assumed I'd imagined it. And so we went over what happened, and our stories were the same, except she said the creature had a wolf-like head. After our experience, my friend, who was Hmong, went to see a shaman. The shaman believed it was an evil spirit and performed a cleansing on her. She was still shaken up by the experience for several weeks. I tried to hire a spiritual advisor online, but when I described the experience and asked for a spiritual cleansing of my own, it said they were not available at this time. At the advice of one of my friends, I burned some tobacco and then said a prayer that the entity would leave me alone. It took me several months to just feel normal again, but I still think about it on a weekly basis. I tried to do further research and contacted management at the park. They said the park we went to had ancient Indian remains scattered along the river that were unmarked. They said there were more Indian remains in that park than any other parks that they manage. And so I contacted several Native American friends and was told the entity we encountered was a skinwalker. I know skinwalkers are part of the Navajo culture, but from what I read, it checks more of the boxes here than any other supernatural being or cryptid. Thank you for reading my story. If anyone here has any insight as to what this is, it would be greatly appreciated. And then that's it. That's everything they have to mention with regards to this story. So first off, this is a more recent one, probably the most recent one yet, happening on August 14th, 2021. Brand new location too, there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. So some of you hearing this now, if you know more about that type of location and about the burial mounds and about the unmarked graves and so on, that'd be really great to hear as far as that information. But yes, this looks like a very classic encounter, scary one too, when it comes to this skinwalker. I was getting the chills just hearing that information about those bright eyes just staring back. But the thing that just totally threw it out and made it just another level is the fact that this thing was mimicking that person's voice. pitch perfect mimication, to the point that this other person, the friend, was able to say that yes, it definitely sounded like that person's voice. And the fact that they were just being stared at, no notion as to what it was going to do the entire time as they were walking back to the vehicles. I mean, that is just chilling stuff. Also, what really kind of freaked me out is the idea that they both sensed that this thing was still doing something to them. Like it wasn't necessarily following them, but they both sensed like they had something bad, some bad juju that happened to come with them after this trip. The fact that it took him several weeks in order to feel back to normal gives you a sense that whatever this thing was, it absolutely had latched on to them or did something to them that essentially was causing them to feel bad, to have this eerie, almost evil sense wherever they went. So the fact that it took a shaman and others to be able to cleanse them afterward, that just goes to show the seriousness associated with these skinwalkers. That's crazy too. I'm still getting the chills right now just thinking about the fact that there they were, just nonchalantly, trying to do something right there at the park, either fishing or something else. And then when that happened, they inadvertently came across these scattered Indian remains. And then somewhere along the way, the skinwalker just decided to make a presence there. And of course, it decided to follow them afterwards. Scary stuff. So, but yeah, anybody there from the Minneapolis area, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are with regards to that. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.